This engine, oh, so much power all the time. It revs, but it also has a lot of low-end torque, and oh my God, the amount of grip that this car generates in a corner. The Type R badge is a very special one for Honda. It appeared in the early 1990s on the NSX supercar. It was only available in Japan, and the idea was to remove as much weight as possible, stiffen the chassis, stiffen the suspension, in order to create a track-ready machine. The R badge really meant racing. Then other variations of it came out afterwards. Obviously, the most popular one was the Integra Type R in the mid-90s all the way to the early 2000s. We had it here in North America as the Acura Integra Type R, and the Honda Civic Type R also existed in Japan and in Europe. There was even a second generation of the Civic Type R, which Honda fans will call the EP3. I actually owned one of those in SIR form, and I always wondered, why did we not get that Civic Type R here in North America? It was fantastic. So here we are now with the third generation Civic Type R. Yes, it's very loud, it's very intense, it's a lot larger than the car it replaces, and a lot heavier. I mean, in many ways, it goes against the whole idea of the Type R, of the R letter. This thing isn't lightweight at all. It's not simple. It's loaded with creature comforts. It has a whole bunch of technology. It has power windows, air conditioning, and a lot of enthusiasts are wondering why. Is this really a Type R, or it's just a marketing stunt? When I first drove the Honda Civic Type R back in 2017, I remember saying that it was a very ugly vehicle. I really did not like its busy Batmobile styling. 4 years later, I still don't find this thing particularly pretty, but I will say that it is starting to age well. I actually adore this color. I find that in a darker color like this dark gray, the Civic Type R looks a lot more mature. It doesn't look as much like a boy racer, and in a world where cars are turning more and more into spaceships, this is starting to make a bit more sense. Now, this is the 2021 model year. This is the last model year of the current Civic Type R. There's a new Civic coming out in 2022. We still don't know anything about the Type R yet. There might be a hiatus next year. And if you want this one in Canada, well, you're too late. It's not even available anymore. Last year in 2020, the Type R was submitted to a facelift. So this is basically the same thing. A few changes were brought to the front. My particular favorite one is the small air intakes in the front. Honda finally assumes itself. It used to be a large fake intake. Now they closed it all up, and all you see is the real intake for the car's induction system. So that's well thought out from Honda. Finally, no more fake intakes. For the rest, however, what you need to know is everything you're seeing on this car, the wide body, the intake in the front, the gigantic rear spoiler, and even the Mickey Mouse-like kind of stuff here in the back, it's all functional. It all has a purpose. So before I go for a drive, let me go around the car and explain to you why the Civic Type R is serious business. Let's begin with this air intake right here. It's functional, but it's not to cool down the engine. It's actually quite clever. As you can see, there's a little metal piece here underneath the hood. The air goes in there. It is pushed on each side of the car. It goes down in the fender, and it is pushed back on the side. Why, you ask? Well, that's to create downforce. It pushes the front of the car to the ground. Because this is a front-wheel drive vehicle, it gives you more grip, and it allows you to enter a corner a lot faster. Then there are these massive Fender Flares that not only look really cool, but they're also functional because the Civic Type R has a considerably wider track than a conventional Honda Civic. These flares also work as ventilators to cool down the brakes that are absolutely enormous. It's also to house the 245 wide tires. Yes, 245. We're talking about a Honda Civic here. So the air comes in through the front, cools down the brakes, and exits through the ducts here in the back. It's all functional. And finally, there's the triple exhaust treatment out the back. And you're probably thinking, oh my God, that's such a nice fake exhaust system, but it's not. Believe it or not, this is actually functional. Now, all the time when you're driving on a regular basis, the Civic Type R uses its two main exhausts. The central one activates when you're cruising on the highway. It's actually to reduce turbulence. It's to avoid the droning sound of a sports performance exhaust. And it actually works because this thing is unbelievably smooth on the highway. And of course, there's the gigantic rear spoiler that appears to have been taken straight out of a Fast and the Furious movie, and the top diffuser. Now, together, these create a lot of downforce, according to Honda, and they also generate what the car maker likes to call a Venturi effect. Basically, when the air comes on the top, it's broken down, it goes underneath the spoiler, there's a kind of a wing effect happening, and the car is squatted down and handles even better. All right, so this is actually the 5th time that I drive the Civic Type R, and every time I drive it, I get to know it more and more, and I appreciate it more for what it is. Now, you're not gonna have any fancy launch controls with this car, and obviously it's not all-wheel drive, so it won't be as quick off the line as, say, a Volkswagen Golf R or a Subaru WRX STI. This is not a car that was built to impress people on a drag strip. It was built to satisfy its driver and its driver only. And the level of precision in this vehicle is absolutely astonishing. As you obviously know, I drive a lot of vehicles for my job. I have the opportunity of driving pretty much anything in this profession. Some press cars I enjoy driving, and some honestly end up sleeping in my driveway for the entire week. Every time I book a Civic Type R, I go out of my way to drive it. Every single evening after work, I go out on a long drive and I empty its gas tank. And each time when I tell myself, okay, I'm done driving this thing, for some reason, I'm still addicted to it. I want to drive it even more. That is fantastic. In a world where everything is becoming automatic and electronic and electric as well, having a good old front-wheel drive hot hatchback with a manual transmission. This thing only comes with a 6-speed manual, and it's a Honda manual. It is arguably the best manual transmission in the world. As far as driving goes, this is up there next to, I don't know, a BMW M2 competition manual, or perhaps a Porsche Cayman GT4. But those are much more expensive vehicles. I'm talking about a Honda Civic. It's up there among the greats. And if you still don't believe me, look at the Nürburgring lap times of the Civic Type R. 2 years in a row, it beat the record for the fastest production front-wheel drive vehicle in the world. I mean, of course, there aren't that many high-performance front-wheel drive vehicles on the market, so that wasn't very hard to beat. But when you look at the lap times, the Civic Type R is up there with Porsche 911s and Chevy Corvettes. Again, we're talking about a freaking Honda Civic. Now, to get all of that performance, which I'll get to in a few seconds, obviously 6-speed manual transmission. I have a mechanical limited slip differential in the front. I also have a very trick suspension system to mitigate torque steer. This engine is a 2-liter turbocharged engine that also has Honda's VTEC system, so it's VTEC and turbo, pumps out 306 horsepower. Now, you'd probably think that, whoa, 300 horsepower in the front wheels, it can be manageable, it must be awful to drive, but no, it's not. Let me give you an example. I'm going to downshift this thing, I'm in 3rd gear, I'm going to wait to be in a straight line. Now, I'm in 3rd gear, I'm at approximately 4,000 RPM, going about 80 kilometers an hour. I'm going to put the steering wheel straight, I floor it, and it doesn't move. It doesn't move. The steering wheel is straight. The wheels do not move. And it's the same story when I take off in 1st gear and 2nd gear. Of course, I'm going to be hunting for grip because it's front-wheel drive, but the steering wheel is never moving. It's never going to destroy my knuckles like in a Mazda Speed 3 or the old Dodge SRT4s. Remember those? They were great, but you couldn't drive them because they have way too much power on the front wheels. Now, the reason why it's front-wheel drive is because Honda is the king of front-wheel drive applications, and because this is a Civic Type R, they really wanted to honor its past. The Civic Type R was always front-wheel drive. It's also to reduce weight. Now, okay, this is a very heavy car. It's almost twice the weight of the original Civic Type R, but the reason for this is because this is a $45,000 Civic. Nobody would buy a $45,000 Honda Civic in this day and age that would have no creature comforts, only 2 seats, no air conditioning, no satellite navigation. What you want from a $45,000 Honda Civic, you want it to be a hatchback. You want it to have 4 doors. You want to have climate control. You want to have satellite navigation. You want to have XM radio. You want all of that stuff. And you get it. This is the most equipped Honda Civic ever. But obviously, you don't want to hear me ranting about the car, how it's made. You want to see how it drives. If you've never experienced the Civic Type R, it's really hard to explain it in front of a camera, but I'll do my best to show you the kind of emotions this vehicle transfers to its driver. So I now set it in R mode. I'm a nice winding road. I'll shift down in third gear. By the way, what you're hearing is a synthesized engine sound. I really don't like it. It was new for 2020 and you can't remove it. But here we go. All right. This engine, oh, so much power all the time. It revs, but it also has a lot of low end torque. And oh my God, the amount of grip that this car generates in a corner. I'm not going to say how fast I'm going right now, but I'm not going slow. I'm on a winding road, and I'm also on very beaten roads because I live in Quebec. And although this is a race car for the road, the suspension is surprisingly compliant. Oh my God. What an engine. And what? Oh my God, the brakes. The brakes. You want to slow down in a Civic Type R, it's instantaneous. You slam the brake pedal and right away your face is ripped off of your skull and splattered in the windshield. But for a car that has this much performance, it is spectacular. You could humiliate a supercar on the right racetrack if you were a good driver, and of course the supercar driver was not a good driver. You could humiliate him or her. You could really just dogfight a Lamborghini Huracan in the twisties and probably win with the Civic Type R, because this is serious stuff. And this pretty much sums up my review of the Civic Type R. Normally I would do a fancy voiceover to finish off and everything, but you know what? I think I'm just going to end this here in the driver's seat. And because there are no more of these cars available at Honda Canada, I think I'm just going to run away with it. I'm keeping this thing. This is mine. This is mine. I love this thing. I want one. Oh, I want one so bad. Oh.